The night was eerily still, the kind of silence that wraps around you like a shroud, as if the universe itself held its breath. 17 years had passed since the last flicker of light danced above the same desolate field, a haunting memory buried beneath layers of time. But now, in the depths of the rural night, something was stirring, a pulse in the air, a whisper of anticipation that sent shivers down the spine. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted from the ground, illuminating the darkness in a way that felt both miraculous and terrifying. It was as if the earth had awakened and revealed its secrets, beckoning those brave enough to witness what had been concealed for nearly 2 decades. What emerged from that sacred soil was beyond comprehension, a testament to something greater lurking just out of sight, and the silence that followed was pregnant with foreboding. What had returned to this lonely patch of earth, and what implications did it hold for those who dared to observe? The questions loomed like shadows as curiosity tangled with dread, igniting a desperate need to unravel the mystery that had resurfaced after so many years. The night was eerily still, the kind of silence that wraps around you like a shroud, as if the universe itself held its breath. 17 years had passed since the last flicker of light danced above the same desolate field, a haunting memory buried beneath layers of time. But now, in the depths of the rural night, something was stirring, a pulse in the air, a whisper of anticipation that sent shivers down the spine. In the small town of Stillwater, nestled among the rolling hills of Pennsylvania, the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the faintest hint of something metallic. The moon hung low, casting a silver sheen over the vast expanse of cornfields. As the wind rustled through the cornstalks, the sound was like hushed voices murmuring secrets that only the night could understand. This was a place untouched by the frenzy of the modern world, where time felt suspended, and the past lingered like a ghost. Beneath this veil of tranquility, the townsfolk had long since grown accustomed to the stories, tales whispered in the flickering glow of porch lights, passed down through generations like a worn family heirloom. The field, once vibrant, had become a canvas for the inexplicable. It was here that odd formations had appeared years ago, geometric patterns that defied logic, leaving behind a lingering question. What had come to call this patch of earth home? As the clock struck midnight, the atmosphere shifted. The usual symphony of nocturnal creatures fell silent, and an unsettling stillness descended over the landscape. The crickets ceased their chirping, the owls paused mid-hoo, and even the rustling leaves seemed to hush, as if the world itself were waiting for something to unfold. Farmer James, who had lived on the edge of the field for more than 30 years, felt a chill creep up his spine. He stepped out of his weathered barn, the scent of hay mixing with the cool night air, and squinted into the darkness. In that moment he felt it, a subtle vibration beneath his feet, an energy that pulsed like a heartbeat. It was as if the ground had awakened from a long slumber, and the air crackled with a sense of expectancy. James glanced toward the field, where shadows danced in the outlying darkness, and he could have sworn he saw a flicker of light glimmering just beyond the horizon. It was fleeting, but enough to send a wave of unease washing over him. What could it be? The wind shifted, carrying with it a strange hum, a sound that resonated deep within his chest, echoing like a distant memory. With each passing moment, the energy intensified. A blinding flash erupted from the ground, illuminating the darkness in a way that felt both miraculous and terrifying. The light surged upward, casting long, unnatural shadows that twisted and turned as if alive. It was as if the earth had awakened and revealed its secrets, beckoning those brave enough to witness what had been concealed for nearly 2 decades. For a heartbeat, time itself seemed to pause, caught in the throes of something ancient being stirred from its slumber. In the nearby town of Stillwater, The residents were roused from their slumber by the brilliance cutting through their windows, painting their walls with an otherworldly glow. Curiosity coiled tightly in their chests, drawing them toward the source, while an unshakable sense of dread loomed just behind them. It was a familiar call, one that had long been buried under the weight of disbelief and denial, but now it beckoned them with an urgency they could not ignore. As James stood frozen, his heart racing, he felt a presence behind him, a shadow that lingered just out of sight. He turned slowly, half expecting to see a fellow farmer, but the only company was the yawning abyss of night. The silence that followed the blinding light was pregnant with foreboding, the kind of silence that echoed with lost possibilities and unspoken fears. The shadows seemed to stretch around him, wrapping tighter as if to hold him in place, urging him to step back, to retreat into the safety of the known. But there was something about that light, an undeniable allure that whispered promises of understanding and revelation. What had returned to this lonely patch of earth? What implications did it hold for those who dared to observe its reawakening? The questions loomed like shadows as curiosity tangled with dread, igniting a desperate need to unravel the mystery that had resurfaced after so many years. As dawn began to creep in, the air thick with anticipation, James could feel the weight of the night pressing down on him. The light had faded, leaving behind only the imprints of its presence. The landscape was now painted in shades of muted grey, the remnants of the night spectacle hidden beneath the shroud of day. Yet the questions remained. What had he witnessed? What had awakened in that field? And would it ever truly be revealed? The sun rose slowly, casting long shadows across the field, and the world felt different, as if the very fabric of reality had shifted. James took a deep breath, the earthy scent now tinged with something metallic, something that felt as though it belonged to another world altogether. The day stretched ahead, brimming with uncertainty and the haunting echo of the night before. The mystery was only beginning, and the sense of something greater lurking just out of sight gnawed at him, a reminder that the answers he sought might lead him down a path best left unexplored. As the first light of dawn broke, spilling a pale wash of gold across the horizon, the rural landscape gradually emerged from its nocturnal shroud. James stood still, rooted to the spot, as though the earth itself had grown weary of his movements. The air was thick with humidity, mingling with the earthy scent of tilled soil and the metallic tang left by the vanished light. It was a paradoxical morning. The sun heralded a new day, yet the remnants of last night's phenomenon clung to him like a second skin, urging him to confront the enigma that had unraveled before his eyes. The fields stretched out before him, their undulating forms now visible, the rows of corn swaying gently in the morning breeze. The rustling of leaves whispered secrets, as if the very plants were murmuring amongst themselves, aware of something amiss. A chilling wind drifted through the fields, carrying with it a sound that was not of nature, a low, pulsating hum that resonated just beneath the threshold of hearing. It was an unsettling symphony, one that seemed to vibrate through the very marrow of his bones, an echo of the inexplicable that had breached the quiet of this rural existence. James turned his gaze toward the barn, its weathered wood standing sentinel against the encroaching light. The familiar silhouette now felt foreign, as if it had absorbed the night's events and was now wearing them like a shroud. The shadows beneath the eaves danced uneasily, and he half expected to see something emerge from them, something that had been awakened by the intrusion of the light. The silence that wrapped around him was punctuated by the distant call of a crow, an ominous reminder that nature had not forgotten the uncanny disturbance. He stepped forward, his boots crunching softly against the gravel path, each step echoing like a heartbeat in the stillness. The ground beneath him felt alive, almost electric, vibrating subtly as he moved. He paused, closing his eyes to better attune himself to the sensations that enveloped him. He could feel the pulse of the earth, a rhythm that seemed to quicken with his proximity to the fields. It was as though the land itself was aware, holding its breath in anticipation of his next move. The barn door creaked open, revealing a sliver of shadowy interior. James hesitated, an inexplicable urge to retreat clawing at him. But a compulsion stronger than fear pulled him forward, urging him to uncover the mysteries that lay hidden within the familiar confines of his own property. He stepped inside, the cool air contrasting sharply with the warmth of the morning sun. The scent of hay and aged wood wrapped around him. But beneath that, he caught a whiff of something else. A metallic odor that sent a jolt of unease coursing through him. Inside the barn, the sunlight filtered through the slats, casting long, angular shadows that created a geometric dance across the floor. It was here, in this familiar space, that he felt the weight of the unknown pressing down upon him. He moved cautiously, his breath shallow, straining to listen for any sound that might hint at the strangeness of the previous night. The silence felt oppressive, as if the very air was thick with secrets waiting to be unearthed. As he wandered deeper into the barn, he noticed the tools hanging on the walls, each one a testament to the labor that had shaped his life. But today, they seemed to glimmer with an unfamiliar sheen, as if they too had been touched by the otherworldly light. His fingers brushed against the cold metal of a pitchfork, and he recoiled as a jolt of electric energy surged through him, a sensation that made the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. It was as if the tools were alive, imbued with a purpose that transcended their mundane existence. Then a sound pierced the stillness, a low, resonant thrum that vibrated through the very bones of the barn. James froze, his heart pounding in his chest. It was a sound unlike any he had heard, a blend of mechanical whirs and pulsating beats, as if the barn itself was alive, breathing in sync with the rhythm of the earth. He turned, straining to locate the source of the noise, but all he found was the familiar clutter of farm equipment, now cast in an eerie light that felt foreign and unsettling. Just then, a sharp cry echoed from outside, breaking the spell of silence that had enveloped him. It was the frantic bleating of goats, their panic palpable even from within the barn. James rushed outside, the unease morphing into a sense of urgency. As he stepped back into the daylight, the world felt different. The colors were too vivid, the sounds too sharp, and the air thrummed with an energy that was both exhilarating and terrifying. He moved quickly toward the goat pen, the creatures milling about in a state of distress, their wide eyes reflecting a fear that James could not comprehend. He scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of the anomaly that had disrupted the peace of the night. But all he found was the open expanse of the fields, now bathed in the harsh light of day, offering no answers, only more questions. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught his eye, a shimmer in the distance that danced just beyond the edge of the field. It was fleeting, gone as quickly as it had appeared, but it left a lingering sensation of dread in its wake. Something was there, something he could not see but felt in the marrow of his bones. The air thickened with tension, as if the land itself was holding its breath, waiting for him to make the next move. James stood at the edge of the field, his heart racing, the weight of the unknown pressing down upon him. What had he witnessed? What had awakened in the quiet corners of his life? The answers felt tantalizingly close, yet remained just out of reach, inviting him to delve deeper into a mystery that promised to unravel everything he thought he knew. And as he gazed into the expanse of the field, a chill ran down his spine, whispering that the night was far from over. He was only at the beginning of a path that could lead to revelations beyond comprehension, and the lurking presence he felt was only the first hint of something much more profound and perhaps far more dangerous. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a harsh light over the landscape, yet the warmth felt distant, almost alien. James stood at the edge of the field, The ground beneath his boots cool and unyielding. The air was thick with the scent of earth and the faintest hint of something metallic like freshly spilled blood. He could hear the goats bleating, a jarring contrast to the serene backdrop of the rural landscape, their cries filled with desperation. It was as if they were trying to communicate a warning, but their language was indecipherable, lost in the chaos of panic. As he looked out over the undulating waves of grain, the vibrant greens and golds seemed to writhe under the glare of the sun. The field, once a familiar landscape, now appeared foreign, its beauty marred by an unsettling energy that pulsed just below the surface. The silence of the morning seemed to stretch and warp, becoming almost tangible, wrapping around him like a thick fog. He could feel the tension in the air, a charged atmosphere that set his nerves on edge. Then came the sound, a low, rhythmic hum that resonated in the pit of his stomach, vibrating through the ground and into his bones. It was a sound he had never heard before, unlike anything the countryside had to offer. The noise felt alive, throbbing in sync with his heartbeat, and for a moment he was paralyzed, caught in a web of uncertainty. The goats had fallen silent, their wide eyes staring at something unseen, and James turned slowly, his breath hitching in his throat. The shimmer he had seen earlier came back into view, this time brighter and more defined. It hovered just at the edge of the field, pulsating with a rhythm that seemed to call out to him. His instincts screamed at him to run, to flee the unknown that lay before him, but an inexplicable force held him in place. The light twisted and turned, forming shapes that danced in the periphery of his vision, but whenever he tried to focus, it would vanish, leaving only the echo of its presence. James's heart raced as he stepped closer to the edge of the field, the grass brushing against his ankles like whispered secrets. The sound intensified, a cacophony of metallic clicks and deep resonances that seemed to converge from all directions. The air grew heavy, almost thick enough to cut, and he could taste the metallic tang on his tongue. It was a taste of fear, a reminder that he was intruding upon something ancient and powerful. He caught sight of the geometric patterns etched into the earth, formations that were undeniably unnatural. They spiraled outward, some patterns intricate and others simple, yet all mesmerizing in their precision. The plants within these shapes were bent, not broken as if they had been caressed by an unseen hand. It was impossible to comprehend how such formations could have appeared overnight. Yet here they were, vivid and undeniable. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the air, a sound that pierced the tension like a knife. The goats erupted into a frenzy, their bleating now a chaotic symphony of fear. James stumbled back, heart racing, the world around him blurring into a haze of colors and sounds. He felt as if he were teetering on the edge of a precipice, the ground beneath him shifting, threatening to give way. Every instinct screamed at him to retreat, to escape the pull of the unknown, yet an inexplicable curiosity kept him rooted to the spot. In that moment of chaos, he caught a glimpse of something, a shadow, perhaps, flitting between the rows of corn, too quick to define. There was no denying it. Something was watching him. The realization sent a chill cascading down his spine, and he felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. Whatever this presence was, it was not benevolent. It was as if the very land held its breath, waiting for him to make a choice. James finally tore his gaze away from the unsettling patterns and the flickering light. Feeling the weight of the unknown heavy on his shoulders, the urgency of the moment pressed against him, demanding action. But what could he do? To confront the mystery that lay before him felt both exhilarating and terrifying, like standing at the edge of a deep, dark chasm, peering into the abyss. As the hum crescendoed into a deafening roar, the world around him began to blur, colors swirling, sounds melding into a singular, overwhelming wave of sensation. He felt as if he were slipping, teetering on the brink of something vast and unfathomable. In that moment, the fear morphed into a strange sense of purpose. He needed to understand, to unravel the threads of this enigma that had woven itself into the fabric of his life. With a deep breath, James steeled himself. He stepped forward, the earth firm beneath his feet, each step a declaration against the fear that threatened to consume him. The light flickered once more, and he could feel its pull, a magnetic force drawing him closer to the unknown. The world around him faded until all that remained was the hum, the glow, and the tantalizing promise of discovery. In that instant, he knew he was no longer merely an observer. He was becoming a participant in a cosmic mystery far beyond his comprehension, a story that had begun long before he had ever set foot on this land. And as he crossed the threshold of the field, he felt an awakening stir within him. A sense that he was not just chasing answers, but rather he was being beckoned into a deeper understanding of the universe itself. The night may have been over, but the true journey had just begun. As James stepped into the field, the atmosphere thickened, wrapping around him like a shroud. The air was heavy with an unnameable tension, a blend of earthiness and something metallic that pricked at his senses. Each breath felt like a risk, as if the very act of inhaling could draw in the unknown that lurked just beyond the veil of his perception. The flickering light pulsed rhythmically, casting elongated shadows that danced eerily across the ground, teasing the edges of his vision. He could hear the soft rustle of the wind through the tall grasses, but it was accompanied by an undercurrent of sound that seemed almost alien, a low, thrumming vibration that resonated deep within his chest. It was a haunting melody, like a forgotten song echoing through the ages, and it set his heart racing as he moved further into the heart of the field. The sensation of being watched intensified, prickling at the nape of his neck, each step echoing like a drum beat in the silence surrounding him. The world outside this bubble of light felt impossibly distant, as if he had crossed into another realm entirely. The geometric patterns sprawled out before him, a labyrinth of intricately woven lines and shapes that defied logic. He knelt, tracing the curves and angles with his fingertips, feeling the cool earth beneath his touch. There was a strange warmth emanating from the formations, as if they were alive, breathing in tandem with the pulsing light above. The patterns twisted and turned, leading his gaze upwards, where the stars blinked down at him, seemingly aware of the cosmic dance unfolding below. It was as if the universe had conspired to create this moment, a convergence of forces that drew him deeper into its embrace. Suddenly, the hum shifted, morphing into a series of sharp metallic clicks, reminiscent of machinery long abandoned. The sound reverberated through the air, causing the hairs on his arms to stand on end. James's heart raced. It was a clear warning, a signal that whatever was happening here was not merely a figment of his imagination. The ground beneath him vibrated subtly, and he could feel the pulse of something monumental, something ancient, resonating through the soil. It was a rhythm that spoke of time itself, an echo of the past intertwined with the present, urging him to listen, to understand. In that moment, the light above brightened, casting eerie shadows that danced wildly across the field. The patterns beneath his fingers shimmered with an iridescent sheen, glowing with an otherworldly energy that was both inviting and menacing. It felt as though they were alive, shifting in response to his presence, beckoning him to delve deeper into their mystery. But as he leaned closer, a wave of dread washed over him. What if he was not meant to uncover these secrets? What if the very act of seeking knowledge would draw forth something that should remain buried? James's pulse quickened, his instincts screaming at him to retreat. But the pull of the unknown was undeniable. He found himself caught in a paradox, a desperate need to flee clashing violently with an insatiable curiosity that tethered him to the spot. The air around him crackled with energy, each breath tasting metallic and sharp, as though he were inhaling the remnants of long-forgotten truths. Then, just as quickly as it began, The pulsating light flickered and dimmed, plunging the field into a profound silence. It was a silence that pressed against his ears, heavy and unforgiving. The world seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for him to make a choice. James felt a shiver run down his spine, his heart pounding in his chest as he strained to listen, to grasp the nuances of this eerie stillness that enveloped him. Suddenly a fleeting shadow danced at the edge of his vision, darting between the rows of crops, leaving a trail of uncertainty in its wake. He turned, driven by an instinctual urge to pursue, but found only the stillness of the field, the patterns unwavering and unyielding. The sensation of being watched returned, more intense than before, as if the very land itself had turned its gaze upon him. As he stood there, teetering on the precipice of fear and wonder, he realized that he was not merely an observer to this phenomenon. He was being drawn into a narrative that transcended his understanding. The night was alive with whispers of the past, echoes of ancient secrets waiting to be unveiled. James felt himself surrendering to the cosmic pull, the weight of destiny pressing against his shoulders, each heartbeat synchronizing with the rhythm of the land. The moment stretched endlessly, a tapestry woven with threads of uncertainty and anticipation, each second laden with potential. He could feel the energy swirling around him, beckoning him to take that final step into the unknown. The hum returned, a haunting lullaby that promised revelations and yet concealed dangers. James closed his eyes, allowing the vibrations to envelop him, feeling the boundary between himself and the field dissolve. In that suspended moment, he understood that he was no longer alone. The essence of the land, the patterns, and perhaps even whatever unseen entity watched from the shadows, were all part of a greater whole. And as he opened his eyes, the flickering light ignited once more, illuminating the field in a blaze of brilliance and casting a shadow that loomed larger than life. The cosmic mystery awaited, a riddle wrapped in the folds of time, daring him to decipher its meaning before it slipped away into the night. James stood frozen in the field, the air thick with a palpable tension that pressed against his chest, like a weight he could scarcely bear. Every nerve in his body tingled, attuned to the subtle shifts in his surroundings. The soft rustle of leaves whispered secrets, and the night sky, a vast canvas dotted with stars, seemed to pulsate with an energy that transcended his understanding. He could feel the earth beneath him, alive and breathing, as if it were a sentient being aware of his presence. The shadows danced again, teasing the edges of his vision. A flicker of movement caught his eye, something darting between the rows of corn, quick and elusive. His breath hitched, and he involuntarily took a step forward, drawn into the labyrinth of crops that swayed gently in the cool night breeze. The air was heavy with the scent of earth, a mingling of damp soil and something metallic, almost acrid, that hung in the atmosphere like an unspoken warning. As he ventured deeper into the field, the soundscape shifted. The distant hum of crickets faded, replaced by an unsettling silence that enveloped him like a shroud. It was a silence so profound it felt alive, vibrating with unuttered words and ancient knowledge. He strained to listen, but all he could perceive was the erratic thumping of his own heart, echoing in the stillness, a metronome marking the rhythm of his mounting anxiety. He paused, his body rigid, as an inexplicable sensation washed over him, a feeling of being watched. It was a primal fear that clawed at the edges of his consciousness, urging him to flee yet anchoring him in place. The crop seemed to quiver, each stalk reaching toward him, as if the very earth was urging him to uncover its mysteries. The geometric patterns etched into the ground felt like a cryptic message, one that promised answers yet hinted at dangers lurking just beneath the surface. Then, as if to punctuate the growing tension, a low, resonant hum vibrated through the air, harmonizing with the beating of his heart. It was a sound that defied description, a symphony of frequencies that seemed to originate from the depths of the earth itself. The pitch rose and fell like a heartbeat, enveloping James in a cocoon of sound that resonated within his bones, pulling him deeper into the enigma of the night. Suddenly the hum shifted, morphing into a series of metallic notes, sharp and discordant, cutting through the silence like a knife. He felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end, a visceral reaction to the abrupt change in atmosphere. The air crackled with tension, and he instinctively glanced around, searching for the source of the sound. But the field remained obstinately silent, shrouded in mystery. It was then that he noticed it, a flicker of light, subtle yet undeniable, rising from the ground like a beacon. The glow danced above the crops, casting elongated shadows that twisted and writhed, as if trying to escape the confines of the earth. James's breath quickened, his gaze fixated on the phenomenon, an irresistible force drawing him closer. The light illuminated the intricate patterns in the soil, the lines and curves of the formation weaving a tapestry that felt both alien and familiar. As he stepped closer, he could see that the plants surrounding the light were bent but not broken, their leaves untouched yet contorted in a way that defied natural logic. The scent of metal intensified, mingling with the sweet aroma of damp earth, creating a heady mixture that filled his lungs. It was intoxicating and terrifying all at once, igniting a primal instinct to flee while simultaneously compelling him to approach. "James!" A voice suddenly broke through the tension, sending a jolt of adrenaline through him. It was Sarah, his neighbor, her face pale and eyes wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief. "We need to go. Now." But James was rooted to the spot, the magnetic pull of the light and the hum overwhelming his senses. He turned to Sarah, desperate to communicate the gravity of what he felt, the urgency of the moment, but the words caught in his throat. Her gaze darted nervously around them, scanning the field as if searching for something he couldn't see. "There's something here," he managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. "Something we don't understand." Sarah shook her head, panic etching deep lines across her forehead. "We need to leave. You don't know what you're dealing with." Her words fell like stones in the silence, heavy and foreboding. As if in response to her fear, the light flickered violently, casting erratic shadows that seemed to pulse with life. James felt the ground beneath him vibrate, a low rumble that resonated in his chest, as if the very earth was awakening from a long slumber. The sensation was exhilarating and terrifying, a reminder that he was merely a visitor in a realm governed by forces beyond his comprehension. But there was no turning back now. He knew that whatever was unfolding in the depths of the field was a part of him, a puzzle that demanded to be solved. He reached out toward the light, feeling the warmth radiate from it, an invitation to step into the unknown. "James," Sarah's voice cracked with urgency, drawing him back to reality. "It's not safe here. We don't belong in this place." In that moment, he felt the weight of her fear, the gravity of their situation crashing down around him. The light pulsed again, and he hesitated, torn between the allure of discovery and the instinct to flee. Something profound was at stake, and as he stood there, he could sense it. A ripple in the fabric of existence, a moment that could change everything. With a final glance at Sarah, he felt the pull of the field, the hum of the cosmos wrapping around him like a cloak. The mystery lay before him, vast and unfathomable, beckoning him closer. As he stepped forward, the world shifted, and he knew that this night would never be the same again. The dawn broke slowly over the horizon, but the remnants of the previous night clung to the air like a thick fog, heavy with unspoken fears. James stood at the edge of the field, staring at what remained of the impossible formation that had appeared overnight. The early morning sun cast a muted light over the land, illuminating the intricate geometry etched into the earth. but it did little to banish the unease that hung like an oppressive weight in the atmosphere. The crop circles were unlike anything he had ever seen, perfect circles intertwined with elaborate spirals, each line drawn with a precision that seemed otherworldly. As James stepped closer, he could feel a tingling sensation on his skin, a residual energy that pulsed softly beneath his fingertips. The scent of damp earth mixed with something metallic, a tang that made his stomach churn. He knelt beside the nearest swirl, running his hands over the bent stalks, marveling at how they lay gracefully against the ground without a single break. It was as if they had been coaxed into this position rather than crushed underfoot. In the distance, the first light of day revealed the outline of the barn, its weathered wood standing stark against the soft glow of dawn. Birds began to stir, their calls echoing through the stillness, yet there was an unsettling absence of other noises. No rustle of leaves, no distant hum of tractors, no lowing of cattle. The world felt unnaturally quiet, as if it held its breath, awaiting the next act in a drama yet to unfold. James's heart raced as he recalled the events of the previous night. The vibrating ground, the flickering light, Sarah's frantic pleas echoing in his mind. He had felt a presence, something that transcended the ordinary. And now, standing before the inexplicable remnants, he felt as if he were on the precipice of a revelation that could shatter everything he thought he knew. But dread gnawed at him. What if he was wrong? What if this was a door to something that should remain closed? He looked around, half expecting to find Sarah at his side, but she was still at the edge of the field, her expression a mixture of fear and curiosity. She had wanted to leave, and yet here they were, drawn into a puzzle neither of them could solve. The air felt charged, and James could almost hear the distant whispers of the cosmos, beckoning him to understand. "James," Sarah's voice broke through his reverie, pulling him back to the present. "We need to call someone. Whatever this is, it can't be ignored." Her eyes were wide, reflecting a mixture of determination and trepidation, but the urgency in her tone struck a chord deep within him. He knew they should alert the authorities, the local news, anyone who might uncover the truth behind the manifestation. Yet, a part of him hesitated, the same part that had drawn him closer to the light the night before. "Sarah, wait," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "What if we're missing something? What if there's something here that we need to understand first?" He gestured toward the formation, his fingers trembling with a mix of excitement and fear. "Look at the patterns. There's a message here, something we can't see yet." She shook her head, her brow furrowing. "Or it could be something dangerous, James. This isn't just a curiosity. This is unsettling. What if it's a sign? What if it means something we can't comprehend?" Her voice broke, and for a moment he could see the glimmer of tears forming in her eyes. The weight of the unknown pressed heavily on them both. As the sun climbed higher, the light dropped into the formation, creating shadows that danced across the ground, making the intricate designs appear alive. James leaned closer, feeling the pull of the mysterious energy that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the circles. Within that moment he could almost hear a low hum, a resonating frequency that vibrated through the soil and into his bones. "Do you hear that?" he whispered, half expecting her to dismiss him again. But she didn't. Instead, she stepped closer, her expression shifting from fear to intrigue as she strained to listen. The sound was faint, almost imperceptible, but it thrummed with an urgency that set his heart racing. I think it's coming from the center," he said, pointing to the core of the closest swirl. "There's something there, something we need to discover." He could almost feel the pulse of the earth beneath him, urging him to delve deeper into the heart of the enigma. As they stood together, the distance between them closing, An unsettling thought crept into his mind. What if they were not alone? The sensation of being watched returned, wrapping around them like an unwelcome shroud. He glanced over his shoulder toward the tree line, where shadows flickered and danced in the early light. He shook his head, forcing the notion away as paranoia gnawed at the edges of his consciousness. "James, we need to be careful," Sarah said, her voice low but firm. "We can't let curiosity lead us into something we can't control." But the pull of the formation was intoxicating, a siren's call that resonated with a part of him he hadn't known existed. He felt drawn to it, as if the very fabric of reality was woven into those patterns, and he was meant to unravel it. With a deep breath, he took a step forward, feeling the gentle vibration beneath his feet intensify. The world around him shimmered, the lines of reality blurring as he crossed the threshold into the unknown. The air thickened, charged with an energy that felt almost alive, wrapping him in an embrace that was both comforting and terrifying. As he knelt beside the swirling pattern, he noticed something glinting in the earth, a small metallic object half buried in the soil. His fingers grazed over it, a chill racing up his spine as he unearthed a tiny emblem, etched with symbols he couldn't comprehend. A sense of foreboding washed over him as he held it up to the light, the realization dawning that whatever this was, it was not just a byproduct of the formation, it was a key, a link to something far beyond their understanding. "James, what is that?" Sarah's voice trembled, and he could see her fear morphing into a desperate curiosity. As he turned to respond, a sudden gust of wind whipped through the field, a sharp contrast to the stillness they had felt moments before. The air crackled with energy, and the ground beneath them trembled as if in response to his discovery. And just like that, the atmosphere shifted once more, the weight of the unknown pressing down with renewed intensity. The world around them felt like a fragile tapestry, and in that moment, James understood that they stood on the precipice of something monumental, something that could change the course of their lives forever. But as he stared into the depths of the mysterious formation, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, and whatever was observing them held secrets far darker than they could imagine. The air around James and Sarah pulsated with an unearthly energy, a tension that vibrated through their bodies like an electric current. As he held the emblem aloft, its metallic surface caught the dim light of the moon, reflecting a kaleidoscope of shadows that danced eerily across the fields. The symbols etched onto it seemed to shimmer, shifting as if they were alive, taunting him with their cryptic messages. A low hum resonated from the earth itself, a sound that felt like a heartbeat, a reminder that they were not alone in this desolate expanse. "James, we should go," Sarah urged, her voice barely a whisper, yet it cut through the thick atmosphere like a knife. He could see the fear in her wide eyes, mirrored by the way her fingers trembled against her own thigh, gripping the fabric of her jeans as if it were a lifeline. The darkness around them seemed to pulse, an entity in its own right, wrapping them in its suffocating embrace. "Just a little longer," he breathed, almost against his will, his heart racing with an intoxicating blend of fear and exhilaration. The ground beneath them felt alive, thrumming with an energy that coursed through him, beckoning him to delve deeper into its secrets. The patterns sprawled across the field, intricate designs that twisted and turned in ways that defied logic, tugged at his mind like a riddle begging to be solved. But as he knelt there, entranced, the night grew heavier, the silence deeper. The only sound was the distant rustling of cornstalks swaying in the breeze, but now it seemed almost like a whisper, a warning carried on the wind. He felt an instinctual urge to look over his shoulder, a primal fear clawing at his gut. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced ominously at the edges of their vision, as if the darkness itself were alive and breathing. The sensation in the air shifted again, a palpable change that sent chills racing down his spine. It was as if the world had paused, holding its breath in anticipation. Suddenly, a low, resonant vibration echoed from the formation, reverberating through the ground like the tolling of a distant bell. It was a sound that resonated deep within him, awakening something ancient and primal. He felt it in his bones, a call that sang of forgotten truths and cosmic mysteries. "James," Sarah repeated, her voice tinged with desperation. "Please." He turned to her, the fear etched on her face a stark contrast to the thrill coursing through him. "What if this is a connection?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "What if we're meant to find out what this is?" Sarah's gaze flickered back to the emblem in his hand, then to the swirling patterns on the ground. "Or what if it's a trap?" she countered, her eyes darting nervously around the field. "What if we're not meant to be here?" In that moment, James felt the weight of her words sink into the very marrow of his being. The darkened field stretched endlessly before them. The vastness of the night sky sprawled above, filled with stars that felt too far away, too indifferent to their plight. The air thickened with tension, and for a heartbeat he thought he could hear distinct whispers threading through the wind, carrying secrets he was not meant to know. He glanced back at the emblem, its surface cool against his skin, and felt a pulse of energy emanating from it. A connection that tethered him to something far beyond his understanding. It was a temptation wrapped in danger, a siren's call that promised answers, but hinted at consequences he couldn't yet fathom. A sudden flash of light burst from the formation, blinding in its intensity, illuminating the field in a surreal glow. James instinctively shielded his eyes, the brilliance washing over him like a wave. The light twisted and turned, coalescing into shapes that seemed to momentarily break the fabric of reality, merging the known and the unknown. "James." Sarah's voice was now tinged with panic, pulling him back from the precipice of his own curiosity. He turned to her just in time to see her take a step back, her eyes darting towards the edge of the field where the darkness loomed thickest. The shadows seemed to pulse, as if breathing, and for a fleeting moment, James felt as though something from beyond was reaching out, probing, testing their resolve. He took a step towards her, his instincts screaming at him to leave, to run far away from this place that felt increasingly like a maw, ready to swallow them whole. But as he glanced back at the formation, he saw the patterns ripple, as if responding to their fear. And he was struck by the realization that whatever lay before them was not merely a mystery to be solved, but a puzzle that could tear apart their very understanding of existence. And then, just as abruptly as it had begun, the light flickered out, plunging the field back into darkness. The hum that had filled the air quieted, leaving a silence so profound that it felt suffocating. "Did you see that?" James breathed, his heart racing. But Sarah's eyes were wide with terror, and suddenly they were not alone. The shadows seemed to thicken, swirling around them with an almost sentient awareness, and he felt a cold shiver run down his spine as he realized that they were being watched. "James, please," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "Let's go now." But before he could respond, a low growl rippled through the air, a sound not of this world, reverberating deep within the core of the earth. It was a warning, a declaration of intent, and in that moment, James understood that the mysteries they had sought to uncover were perhaps better left untouched. As they turned to run, the ground beneath them trembled once more, a reminder that whatever had been awakened was not content to remain dormant. They raced toward the safety of the road, the darkness clawing at their heels, the field behind them pulsing with an energy that felt like a heartbeat that promised to remember them long after they had escaped. The night swallowed them as they fled, But as they glanced back one last time, they caught a glimpse of the formation, shimmering faintly under the moonlight, the emblem still clutched in James's hand. For a fleeting moment, it felt as if the very fabric of reality had shifted, sealing their fate with an unspoken promise that they would never truly leave this place behind. The secrets of the night lingered, heavy and oppressive, a reminder that some mysteries were not meant to be solved, but rather to haunt the edges of their minds, whispering of what lay beyond the veil of understanding. And with that, they disappeared into the shadows, their hearts pounding with the pulse of the unknown, forever marked by the cosmic enigma that had beckoned them into its depths.